Hi everyone, welcome to the latest and first anniversary edition of DiBella's Digest with the man himself, Lou DiBella. Lou, happy anniversary!
Happy anniversary, Danny. It's actually interesting because it was 1 year ago when we were just starting to learn what COVID was and the world was closing down that we started. And 2 days ago, I got my second shot and fully recovered from my second shot, and 2 weeks away from reemerging into a more normal life. So it's amazing. This last year seems like it was 10 years on one hand, and on the other hand, it seems like it was yesterday.
Well, I just want to tell the people out there, we've obviously advertised this in advance. Lou will answer all your questions, or as many of them as we can get through. We've got loads already on social media. If anyone wants to ask anything on the live chat on YouTube, please feel free and we'll try and get as many in as we can. And then we've got some really good questions, actually. These were some that I should have asked myself probably at some point over the last year, but hey, I'm cheap, so I'm here to stay.
Go ahead, Dan.
So Lou, the first one.
Let's go right to it.
All right. The first one is from Joe Leggett, and he asks, Katie Taylor against Amanda Serrano. Are we seeing the fight? And also, in a connected question, any plans to speak to commissions in regards to 3-minute rounds and 12 rounds in female title fights?
I have no interest in 12 rounds in female title fights. I have no interest in 3-minute rounds. I think 3-minute rounds are counterproductive. If we can't get television and streaming networks to give more time to women as it is, what makes you think longer fights are going to be more attractive? Additionally, women are not big punchers. The average woman. There are women who are punchers, but they are few and far between. Very, very few. Some of the strongest women in women's boxing are not knockout artists. Look at Clarissa. I don't care if you do 3-minute rounds. It's not going to create more knockouts. It's just going to make longer fights that look exactly the same as what you're seeing right now with a lot less action per minute. It's stupidity. Now, you want to do something smart, my friend? Here's what we do. And this goes to the person. It was a very reasonable question that was asked by the guy that sent it in. But here's what I really think would make a difference. Let's make the gloves smaller for women. Let's instead of doing 8 and 10 ounce gloves like the men do, let's do 6 and 8. I bet you'll see a greater increase in knockouts and more and even more action than you're seeing right now. The rounds will be just as active. And women's boxing, honestly, you get more action in the average round in a woman's fight than you do in a man's, for the most part. And why is that? Well, honestly, it's because men take time off. A lot of men take part of a 3-minute round off. Women don't take time off in a 2-minute round. It's a better product. And by the way, all doing a 3-minute round is going to do is cost the women to make less on an hourly rate. What they got to make, and by the way, women are more susceptible to concussion after extended beatings than men. If you don't believe me, go look it up. Okay, it's one of the reasons why they're considering all sorts of changes for young girls that are playing soccer, and young women playing soccer. So take a look, if you don't believe me. But I'm not going to talk to commissions about that. I am going to talk to commissions about smaller gloves.
And Joe, also asked about the Taylor Serrano fight. We know Katie's fighting Natasha Jonas on the 1st of May. Serrano's just come off a really good win over Daniela Bermudez. Do you see that happening at some point in the future?
It will absolutely happen at some point in the future. But by the time it happens, it's going to be much more of a 50-50 situation. And Amanda, God willing, will be undisputed featherweight champion with every belt, including the Ring Magazine belt. And, Amanda's rating on NBC Sportsnet last week was the highest rating NBC Sportsnet did for any of these Ring City shows. And a lot of people watched it on Twitch, and it was an extremely successful night for Ring City. Amanda is hot right now. And I think the agenda for the rest of this year doesn't involve Katie. It involves fully unifying featherweight. We're negotiating right now with champion from Denmark, Sarah Mahfoud, who's a big celebrity in Denmark. She won Dancing with the Stars there. She's a former kickboxing champion, and she's a good fighter. And she's the IBF champion. Jelena is fighting, I think, on NBC Sportsnet either later this month or next month. I don't know the exact date, but she's defending her BA title, and hopefully we will be able to fully unify with Mahfoud and Jelena in 2021. I mean, if Amanda walks out of 2021 fully unified champion, I think we've set up a mega fight, the biggest fight in female boxing history. And Claressa Shields has fought some significant fights and very big fights, but there's not a lot of challenge to her. There aren't that many legitimate challenges to her at the higher weight classes. The lower weight classes are a lot more stacked with talent. So, Amanda's naturally a 26-pounder. Let her establish herself as 26. I laugh at comments that I've gotten from people on social media saying Amanda's ducking Katie Taylor. No, Amanda doesn't want to take way less money. And Amanda's not ducking anybody, but Amanda's coming up 2 full weight classes. I mean, you're not ducking someone. I mean, are people saying that Katie's ducking Claressa Shields? No. I mean, it's ridiculous. No one's ducking anybody. When the fight happens, it's going to be the biggest fight in women's boxing history. It's going to sell out an arena someplace, and both women are going to get paid a lot of money. That's when it's going to happen. Here's my prediction. Mid to late 2022.
Okay. And just before we go to the next question, just a quick look at the live chat. Big Bundit, I don't think that's his real name, says, combine the weight classes. There are far too many on the women's side. Interesting. It's kind of what they've done in the amateur side, I suppose. And
you know what? I'm okay with doing that on the men's side a little bit also. We're adding weight classes like bridger weight, but I look down and I see weight classes separated by 4 pounds. And frankly, people are killing themselves to different degrees to artificially make weight classes anyway. I think it probably would be significantly safer to have fewer weight classes. So I'm on board with what what's the guy's name?
Big Bundit. I don't think that's his real name, but yeah, that's what he's calling himself.
Whatever his real name is, I'm down with the sentiment, but I think it needs to be done across the board.
And Jim McDonald Boxing, big friend of the channel, has joined us. He says, big up, lads. Jim McDonald, so he has.
Happy Easter, Happy Easter. Hope you had a good Easter, Jim.
Yeah, hope you had a good Easter, Jim. So you did. Right, so Andy White's got a few questions here. I don't think we'll do all of them because he's being a bit greedy, but there's a couple of really good ones here.
Give me the best.
Yeah, so, well, this is kind of a twofold one. Who's the greatest boxer you've ever promoted, and who was the most difficult to deal with?
That's a really good question. That's a really good question. The greatest fighter I've ever promoted, I wasn't technically a promoter when I was working with Bernard Hopkins. I was more in a I had just left HBO and I had dates, but I was more like an advisor. I became a promoter that year, and I don't think there's any question in my mind that the greatest fighter, boxer, technician, champion I ever worked with was Sergio Martinez. Now I've had like the joy of working with a lot of great fighters. I mean, a lot. So it's very difficult to narrow it down to one. But I really think had Sergio been managed and promoted the right way from the time he first got into boxing, he's already in my mind going to be a Hall of Famer. But I really do think he could have, if you got to remember, he came over here with a damaged leg in his early 30s. And that's really when his career took off. Had his career taken off 10 years earlier because he was perceived to be what he was early on, I think you'd be talking about him as one of the greatest fighters who ever lived. And I already believe he's a Hall of Famer.
And the most difficult to deal with?
There's been a number of those, but it's more complicated. I'm not going to answer that question. I'll tell you why. There were fighters that weren't so difficult to deal with, who had managers that were subhuman pieces of shit, and their managers were impossible to deal with. And even if the kid himself was okay, he entrusted the wrong person. So it's complicated to say the worst guy. I've dealt with some fighters I released because I thought they were pieces of shit, but I'd rather not get into who they are. But I got to be honest, more often than not, it's the third or fourth or fifth parties whispering in the ear of a fighter that needs to be elevated, whispering in the ear, I can do it better, they can do it better, you're being fucked, you're being, there are an awful lot of people in the ear of a fighter, particularly a good fighter. And if a fighter lets the wrong people get in his ear, it's very difficult to do business.
We've got a couple of questions on the live chat relating to Deontay Wilder, and we can probably take them both as a pair. Do you believe Wilder can win another world title? And what are your thoughts on Wilder against the winner of Areola and Ortiz?
I already know who the
Oh,
winner of
naturally Ruiz, shouldn't it? Not Ortiz, Ruiz. Sure,
Ruiz.
it's Areola Ruiz,
I
isn't it?
already know who the winner of Areola and Ruiz is.
Yeah.
So I would like to see the winner of Areola and Ruiz fight Deontay. I think that's a good fight. Yeah, I think that's a good suggestion. I think it's a meaningful fight. Can Deontay win another title? There are things around him that I wonder about, whether he's in a headspace and a place in his career where he can come back full strength. But when you can punch like Deontay Wilder, you can always win a heavyweight title. And in fact, against anybody on any particular night, if you happen to land something huge first. Deontay will always be dangerous as long as he gets in the ring, because I don't anticipate he's going to lose his punch. Yeah, he could win a world title, particularly. Yeah, he could win a world title. I don't think I wouldn't make him a favorite at the moment to beat either Fury or AJ. But I think with his confidence back and a couple of wins, he has the punching power to beat anybody.
A big shout out to Take Ames from Boxing News TV. He's on here watching us. He says, shame we never got to see Sergio against Triple G. And I think we can all agree with that.
Yeah, but I'm tired of Loeffler and the ridiculous shit that it was like anyone was avoiding anybody. Sergio got avoided by everybody. He had to beg, plead. I had to go watch that documentary that's on Maravilla, and you'll see the lengths I had to go through to get him the opportunity against Chavez. They basically took his title away from him at one point. And Triple G and Sergio was not a money fight when at the point at which Sergio was fighting the Chavezes and the Cottos, he needed to go for the fight that was going to pay him the most money. And Triple G wasn't that fight at that point in time. Now, it is a shame, because it would have been a great, great fight. But it really also needed to happen around the time of the Chavez fight or earlier, because it had to be prime against prime. And, we didn't know going into the Cotto fight. Look, we knew that Sergio's knee and leg was shot. We knew it at the time he first came to America, but we didn't know how bad it was until after the Cotto fight. But I wouldn't want to have seen Triple G and Sergio at the time of his career that Cotto took place. A couple of fights earlier, at the time, the points in time that he fought Macklin, that's the kind of timing I would have loved to have seen a Triple G fight in terms of where Sergio was in his career. Even against Darren Barker, where Sergio looked sensational, he had terrible problems planting his foot leading up to that fight. Sergio was such an extraordinary talent and physical specimen that he was able to do. He was never 100% when I promoted him, ever from minute one. But at 85%, he for a year, he was the best fighter in the world.
Okay, so Victor Granillo, will come to your question in a minute, but I'm going to go to some of the questions from social media first. And Eternal Hiatus asking about Saunders Canelo. If you check out DiBella's digest from around 2 weeks ago on the channel, you'll see Lou going in depth on that one. So BoxFan61 and Marty Wall both asked similar questions about Joe Ward. What's the plan for him after his recent win over Delgado?
Okay, literally, you're breaking news on our Q&A. I was working on a fight. Joe's in the States right now. I wanted him with some I wanted him to fight more than once before he went back to Ireland. So he's been here training, since the Delgado fight. And I was working on a couple of things, one in late April, one in early May, for Joe to fight again. And I was close to making a deal. And I got a call from yesterday afternoon that Joe was in the gym sparring and got cut. So in all likelihood now, Joe's going to get on an airplane, go back to his family, and then when he's ready to fight and the cut heals, get him back here and get him back in the ring. Look, he needed to exercise some demons. I mean, and also to get over some personal trauma. He lost, not only did he get seriously injured, have a major surgery, a big rehab, he lost his manager, who would become a good friend, to COVID just a few months ago. So we got him a couple of fights in Mexico that honestly I didn't try to get any publicity for because I wanted no pressure on him. We weren't really looking for top opposition. We were looking to get the rust off of Joe and get him back in the ring on the winning track. And then immediately we took it to Delgado again. And Delgado was coming off a victory on a PBC show against a 5-0 prospect. And I'll tell you something, Delgado may not be the prettiest guy to watch, but Delgado is a tough customer and not an easy out for anybody at 175. So, I mean, Joe didn't look spectacular in the fight, but he dominated completely and won every round. And he defeated the guy that got the win against him for health reasons in his first fight. And that's what he needed to do. And our intent was to get him right back into the ring. He'll get into the ring now as soon as the healing on the stitches he got will allow.
Okay, so Victor Granito on the live chat asks, why do you think PBC fighters, selected PBC fighters will say, only fight around once a year? And do you think they're hindering their long-term career in doing so?
I don't think any fighter should fight only one time a year. And even if that means if the fighter's getting overpaid grossly one time a year, then fight 2 or 3 times for less money, because you're defeating your own legacy and your own ability to compete at the highest level when you very rarely fight. And I'm tired of watching fighters on social media being keyboard and video warriors who haven't fought in 2 years. Forget about the pandemic. And guys who fight once a year when there wasn't a pandemic. I don't know why. I guess because they're content to. Look, some of the fighters believe if I can make as much money fighting once as I can make fighting twice, I'll fight once. But maybe I like the mentality of the throwback fighter from my youth. There seem to be fewer and fewer of them now.
And this is probably my favorite question of the ones we got in advance, from Darren New, 1975. He says, what's the one fight you regret never getting over the line? Not for financial gain, but because you believe the fans missed out on a really, really good fight.
Bo Lennox Lewis, when I was running boxing at HBO.
Yeah.
I mean, and I was close to both fighters. I mean, Lennox and, Riddick and Lennox were both invited to my wedding. Riddick actually went. But, I mean, I was close to both fighters, and they were both incredibly skilled guys at the top of their game. And they were such natural. Yeah.
Oh, we lost you at the end there, Lou.
Because someone doesn't get the message that I can't answer the phone when I'm on with you. No, that would have been a sensational fight. That would have been a sensational fight.
Colin Middlemass says, of all the prospects you promote who've had between, say, 5 and 10 fights, who should we really be keeping an eye on?
Can you hold on one second, because this person won't.
No, go for it. Hang in there with us, guys. Lou's just going to get rid of a nuisance caller. I'm sure it's a regular occurrence in Chez DiBella. We will get through as many of your questions as we can on the live chat. Obviously, we've got some from social media. We've got stocked up as well. So we'll just get through as many as possible. And where questions cross over or they're very similar, we'll probably just ask one of them. And also, if you ask things that have been on previous DiBella's digests, then it might be worth checking out the channel. So people asking about Saunders against Canelo and Crawford against Spence. We've covered both of those fights in detail previously on other episodes of DiBella's Digest.
Okay, I'm sorry, I'm back.
No, it's all right.
I was a little under the weather for yesterday from the second shot, and a friend was just trying to call me and got concerned when they couldn't reach me.
That's a nice way to be interrupted, I guess.
I guess there were worse ways to be interrupted, yeah.
Indeed. Colin Middlemass, prospects you promote who've had between, say, 5 and 10 fights, who should we really be keeping an eye on?
Jalalov is a beast at heavyweight, a complete animal. He's actually fighting on TV on the show from Uzbekistan yesterday, on the Matchroom show. And by the way, I'm paying for the total cost of the fight, so he's not fighting on the Matchroom through the beneficence of Sir Eddie, but he is fighting on the Matchroom show, and I'm grateful that he got that platform. And he'll be on the Zone on that show from Uzbekistan tomorrow.
Awesome.
I just signed a kid. It's not announced yet, but I just signed a kid. I can't yet fully. I have to learn how to pronounce his last name. But he's a 140-pounder. I signed him with Yvonne Michel as my partner. He had his pro debut today. We paid for his pro debut in Russia today. He's an Armenian kid. Gore the War. Look out for this kid, Gore. He's a beast. I'm very happy with the progress of a lot of my fighters who fought on Showbox, recently. He didn't get the win in the fight, but Mark Reyes Jr., who's my welterweight, is a beast. He's a tough kid, makes great fights. I thought he won the fight, but he didn't get the decision. I have a lot of good prospects. McQuan Williams, he's a little bit more advanced than that. But I have a number of guys in that realm of 5-0 to like 12-0 that I'm very excited about. I think I have a lot of talent right now.
Jimmy Giles, bit of an insider one here, says, what did you say to Tyson Fury in the ring after the first Wilder fight? If you remember. Did you get that, Lou?
Hello, Danny?
All right. Okay, let me ask you that one again.
Am I back?
Yeah, you're back. Jimmy Giles, can you hear me? We were just having a few technical difficulties, guys. Won't be long.
Can you hear me, Dan?
I can hear you, Lou. Can you hear me?
I can't hear you.
No, Lou can't hear me.
You muted yourself.
No, I'm not muted. Not sure what's happened to Lou's audio. I'll just mute him and then unmute him and see if that helps. Lou, can you hear me? No. I hope it wasn't the Tyson Fury question that's caused this sudden lack of hearing. Lou, can you hear me? Right, perils of live streaming, folks. Just bear with me. We will have ways and means of getting through this. Just bear with me a second.
Should I call back in?
No, I think we're fine as we are. If you just talk on the speaker, we should be able to. Oh, because yeah, you're on the same device. That's why. Okay, yeah, call back in. Right, Lou's just going to disconnect and then come back in. So bear with us. And for the person that asked, yes, it is a Q&A session when Lou's microphone is working correctly. And yeah, Jim McDonald, I think you've got a point there. The powers that be didn't want Lou to reveal what he said, so they didn't. Lou, can you hear me?
Am I back?
You are, but can you hear me?
I can hear you perfectly.
Woo! So, Lou, the question was, and I can't remember who asked it now because it's gone down through the scroll, but he asked, after the first Fury Wilder fight, do you recall what you said to Tyson Fury in the ring immediately after the fight?
Yeah, I said it was a terrific fight and it was great for boxing, and you both won, you didn't lose. That's what I said. And I did not say he won the fight. I was being, and by the way, Tyson knew what I said to him, too. I didn't sit there and say my guy lost. I wouldn't have complained if Tyson got the decision, but I thought a draw was actually appropriate based upon the fact he rose from the dead like Lazarus. But I did not, I did say to him, you didn't lose. You both won. And that's what people heard a snippet of it. Oh yeah, he told Tyson he won. No, that's not what I said. And by the way, I went to my own fighter first and said something nice to him. And I walked up to Tyson, who I, by the way, like as a person and consider him a friendly acquaintance and someone I really, I like Tyson Fury. And, we share some concerns about, my brother died of suicide and I've always been a mental health advocate. And, Tyson Fury, I bonded over some of that stuff. And he and I, talked over the years, not relating to boxing. So I walked up to him as walking up to someone I liked and admired and telling him what I really thought. Boxing won that night. That was a sensational heavyweight fight, one of the best we saw in years in terms of drama, honestly. And I was commending him on a night where I didn't think he lost. I thought they both won. And the draw reflected that.
Big thanks to Jan van der Bos, who says, good weekly chat, lads, with 3 or 4 exclamation marks there. He's obviously very excited by this content, so are we. What's Real on Twitter asks, what's the latest on Ivan Baranchyk? Is he planning a comeback?
I think he'd like to come back, and I know his management is sending him through a lot of testing, and he's gotten CAT scans and he's seen specialists. I think his intention is to come back. I do want to make sure he's in fighting shape and physically sound enough to resume his career. I mean, that was one of the more brutal fights, and he spent a very scary night in the hospital. And again, because of the medical rules and how they work, and particularly in the United States, there's a law called HIPAA, which means I don't really get to see the fighters' medical records. So I have to rely on commissions and doctors. See, all those assholes on social media who don't understand why I continue to work with Jermaine Taylor, because I had stepped away from Jermaine Taylor when he had a similar fight to what happened to Baranchyk, happened to him in Germany against Arthur Abraham. And I left as his promoter for a while because I didn't think he should be back in the ring. And I thought that he needed time off to recuperate and he needed to see specialists. Jermaine came back and went to the biggest hospitals in the world, the Mayo Clinic, the Cleveland Clinic, and saw the best neurologists in the world and got fully cleared to fight. And then I came back in as his promoter because I felt that also with me as his promoter, I would also look out for his interests, with health and safety. And he really didn't. I mean, he won a title against Sam Solomon. He fought Caleb Truex and Sam Solomon. His comeback was carefully crafted. But do I think that Jermaine was damaged by boxing? Absolutely. And do I want to see Ivan damaged by boxing? I don't. But because of legality and HIPAA law, I have to rely on the doctors and Ivan and what they'll tell me. I don't have a right to look at his medical records, but I've been assured that he is fit to fight, and I will make sure I am allowed to speak with a competent top neurology group to find out if that is indeed the case.
There's a couple of questions on the live.
Back, yes.
So there's a couple of questions on the live chat. I'm going to wrap into one in a minute, but Babs SP on Twitter asks about former fighters having exhibition contests. He says, is it a reflection of how profitable the sport is at the moment, or is it an indictment of the current crop of fighters? Because no one was paying 50-year-olds millions to fight in 2016, for example.
Yeah, because in 2000 no one was paying older guys in 1995 or 2000 or 2005, 2010, 2015. Why? Because there were real fighters making $50 million. And people wanted to see Floyd Mayweather, even if they hated him. And people wanted to see, before that, Lennox Lewis and Holyfield and Tyson and Holyfield and Tyson and Lewis and Holyfield and Bowe and Mora and Foreman and whatever. We had big events and big fights regularly. Okay? Those are those guys who fought back then are still the biggest names in boxing. And as much as you see, really right now, honestly, there are no pay-per-view. Look, when Fury fights AJ, there'll be a tremendous amount of money made. There are a couple of other fights like that will happen that way. But at the moment, there are more older ex-fighters out there that can come in and generate revenue than there are young fighters fighting that can generate that kind of revenue. And part of it is the fault of us. We haven't built up our stars. We haven't built up our guys because they've never really fought anybody. And even some of our world champions haven't fought the biggest fights. I mean, undeniably, Bud Crawford is one of the best fighters in the world. He's a pound-for-pound guy. I would never disrespect his ability or his talent, and I don't think it's his fault that he's never fought anybody. I think that it's just the politics of boxing and the nature of, we've discussed this many times, all those exclusive avenues, those exclusive, streaming services and network deals. Those things have hurt boxing. So I don't think it's a reflection of the health of the sport. I think boxing is eternal. I think all the boxing is dead. People don't get it. I think boxing will never be dead. People will always fight for other people's entertainment and for other people's dollar, the same way there'll always be pornography because people will always fuck for other people's entertainment and other people's value. So, you know, boxing is eternal. And by the way, at our best, we are as good or better a product in sports than almost anything else. But we are way, way too infrequently at our best. And that's allowed for the entrance in my mind of all the celebrities and YouTubers and old legends.
Now, Adam Mohammed, he asked this question initially quite a while ago, and I was going to get to it, but he's asked it again, so it's perfect timing. He asked, what's the long-term prospects of DAZN in the US?
I think, you know, DAZN is run and owned by smart people. And they figured out that the global plan is the one they really have to pursue for the success of their company. And I think they made it very clear. I think the new guy that I'm spacing out on his name, but there's a gentleman that just went over to be one of the top guys at DAZN, who previously was at ESPN Plus. And I just read an interview by him recently. And he said, you know, we're not going to throw, you know, sports rights in America aren't up for grabs the way they are in the rest of the world. You're not going to get part of the NFL package with a growing streaming service. You're not going to get, you know, the best and biggest sporting events. The rights are simply not available, right? So I think in America, it's going to be a little bit more niche zone. I think the combat sports loving people, particularly boxing fans, hardcore boxing fans, are going to subscribe. And I think as time goes on and they grow internationally, there's a greater potential to get more sports rights and grow more in America. But I think you're clearly, and I heard this from the mouth of the gentleman himself, and I'm spacing out on his name, and I feel old, but
I don't know it either, so I won't worry too much.
But they're going to, I think they're de-emphasizing the states a little bit. I think you know, because of all of the great boxing that they're getting from all around the world, and the stuff that Eddie's going to continue to do here, and Golden Boy. I'm sure there'll be some continuing shows here. Obviously, Canelo's fighting here, you know, on Cinco de Mayo. You know, I think that they'll still have a big presence here, particularly among boxing fans. But they don't have the same ability to get big sports rights in America that they do elsewhere.
Good stuff. Well, I think the questions seem to be thinning out now, so I think we've given us a good account of ourselves over the past 33 minutes so far. But Lou,
I'll field a couple more if there are any last minute ones, Danny. I'll field them.
All right. Well, let's see if anything comes through. One thing I'd like to say, what's been your kind of highlight of the past year while we've been doing the digest? Not on the digest, but just during the same time period. What have been the kind of bright spots in what's been an otherwise gloomy world?
That's a good question. You know, I connected with a lot of people that I hadn't connected with in a long time. People from my life previously, and people I like, care about, love, but barely talk to. And I think the fact that we were all going through this weirdness at the same time caused me to reach out to more people and to talk to more old friends. That was a positive. I think you learned a little bit more of the most important things to you. I think it was a year where you had to gain some perspective. I read a lot. I saw some really good films. I binge watched some great TV that I never generally have the time to watch a TV series all the way through. And I caught up on a number of series from their inception. I'm up to date in Blacklist now, and I'm up to date on Ozark and a number of other things I wouldn't have watched if I didn't have this excess time. You know, when there was less live sports and way less combat sports, I read a lot, and I love to read, and I guess I rediscovered how much I love to read. So there are some good things that came out of it. I wish I could say I worked out like a maniac. I wish I could say I worked out like a maniac and I lost all sorts of weight, but I didn't. I basically weigh. In fact, I I got myself to the point today where I could say I weigh what I weighed before this thing started. So at least I'm not worse off that way. But yeah,
you've maintained. That's what matters.
I've made
Jimmy Giles. Jimmy Giles. No, sorry, not Jimmy Giles. Who was it? Sorry, it's just gone off the scroll. Oh, there we go. Joel Dumas asks, Ngannou against Jones in the UFC, does it sell more, I'm guessing he means pay-per-views, than Wilder Fury?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. 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 So it sells more pay-per-views than Wilder Fury 1, combined with Wilder Fury 2, combined with Wilder Fury 3, if it ever happens.
Wow,
now, the better question is, does it sell more pay-per-views here than Fury and AJ? And the answer to that is also yes, because Fury and AJ is not a domestic fight here, and it's not going to happen in prime time. I think if you look at everything relatively speaking, that our equivalent of that fight, that fight is to MMA what AJ and Fury right now is to the world. Right?
Yeah.
So I think that would be the kind of, yeah. But I don't know. I think that, yeah, that answers the gentleman's question.
And someone else, let's find their names. I want to give people due credit. Oh, Big Bundit again. Good old Big Bundit. Says, what do you think of Oscar calling out DAZN but fighting on Triller? If he does end up fighting, obviously.
I mean, Oscar says and does whatever the fuck he pleases. He doesn't care if he's consistent. He's all over the fucking place. He's a bit of a mess. I mean, he ripped apart this kind of event, and he just dropped the mic at a Thriller press conference because he's coming back against somebody we're hearing is going to be an MMA guy. I mean, you know, Oscar, like, I don't hate Oscar. Oscar's one of the greatest fighters that's ever been out there, and I worked with Oscar for years, and actually I liked and admired him for a long time. But, you know, don't call people out. And I mean, come on, man, clean your own backyard up a little bit.
Fair enough. All right, on that warm and fuzzy note.
Do me a favor, by the way. Don't make that what you carve out into your tweet with my little, like, find something else in the past 45 minutes to use other than that, please. That's my request.
There's been so many things that will provoke a big response on Twitter.
I just remember how off the wall crazy Oscar was ripping May. Remember how much he was ripping Mayweather and Conor McGregor. I'm sorry, Mayweather and McGregor entertained me. I don't give a fuck if it wasn't a real fight. It entertained me. I didn't mind, but like, and I was out there saying at the time, okay, if Mayweather's going to win, but I want to see it, and I don't mind anybody else out there that wants to pay for it, right? But so Oscar now dropping the mic at a Triller press conference after he shat all over that other stuff, it's just not consistent. And by the way, if Oscar wants to come back and do this, it's his business, it's his life, it's his body, and it's his pocketbook. I don't fault Oscar for, if he wants to do it, and if you want to buy it, buy it. I have the same attitude toward Oscar coming back I had about Mayweather and Conor McGregor, right? But come on, I mean, there's a little bit of hypocrisy here, no?
No, I agree. We'll have one more question, but before we do, Jimmy Giles, Saunders Canelo. We covered this in DiBella's Digest around 3 weeks ago. If you have a look on the channel, it's easy to find. We go in depth on it. We had a lot more time than what we did here. Someone else asked about Joe Ward. We covered that earlier in this chat.
I'll give a quick answer on Canelo. Billy Joe Saunders at his best, at 100%, is a bitch to fight. His style is very difficult. He's a very, very skilled boxer, and he's very difficult to fight. Okay? He's also not Canelo. You know, so who am I picking? Canelo. Do I think it'll be a walkover? No, I think it'll be harder than many of the recent fights Canelo's had, but I don't have any doubt that Canelo's going to win.
Good stuff. And yeah, someone asked about Joe Ward. We covered Joe Ward earlier in this chat. So once it's up, if you just go through it, you'll be able to find that pretty easily. It's quite early in the chat. And so last question, Jan van den Bos. He's just asked, what music are you into, Lou?
You know, I love music. And I was a disc jockey before. Like I thought if I didn't get into Harvard Law School, I probably would never have been a lawyer, maybe never got into sports. I probably would have gotten into radio or announcing or commentating, radio, TV. And I was a disc jockey when I was a young guy. And I love music. I love all types of music, but I like everything. Like I'm a big jazz guy. I love reggae. I listen to Latin music. I've been a hip hop guy since hip hop's been around. I've been, it's funny, but in the hip hop community, I'm pretty well known because I've been around hip hop since the early days. A lot of the classic hip hop artists like Rakim, Eric B, Big Daddy Kane, Melly Mel, Grandmaster Flash. I know all these guys. I love hip hop. I love classic rock. My favorite groups in rock and roll, the Grateful Dead, Bruce Springsteen, and the Grateful Dead, Bruce Springsteen, and the Rolling Stones. Those are, and I probably have seen all three of them or saw all three of them about 100 times. I was obsessively fans of those three bands, but I listened to a lot of stuff. I have like a pretty diverse musical taste, and music is the background of my life. Even when I'm working in the office now, I put a turntable in my office. I listen to music when I'm working. I thank God I can multitask that way. But I love music, and I'm a big fan of almost like a lot of different stuff. And by the way, because I've been able to be like sort of near the public eye and involved with the media and boxing and sports since I'm about 29 years old, I got to like meet a lot of musicians and people in the music world and get exposures and see things and see concerts and stuff that I never would have seen otherwise. So music's very important to me.
Great stuff. And I think Jan van der Bos is happy or satisfied with our answer. He says, see you at North Sea Jazz Festival in the Netherlands sometime soon. So there you go.
That's an invite. Festival I'd love to go to. And he should find his way when we're back and running again. The Newport Jazz Festival in Newport, Rhode Island is worth traveling. I don't care where you're coming from. It's worth going into New England and going to Newport Jazz Festival, one of my favorite events.
You might get to go and see Peter Manfredo while you're there. You never know.
One quick interesting thing. You mentioned Peter Manfredo, so you're giving me an opening to mention something. I get a text message every single morning of my life.
I remember you telling me this before, yeah.
From Peter Manfredo, and it's always like, how you doing, bro? Like it's like it's a thought for the day, or a little prayer, or a wish like for a positive week or day, or it's every single day I get something, and his expectation is just to hear back, and he reaches out to me and all the people he cares about, so that and they basically just respond every day, and I get that message from Peter every single day. I got a beautiful one today. And you mentioned Peter Manfredo, one of the nicest guys in boxing and someone I really love.
Great stuff. Well, Lou, it's been an absolute pleasure, not just today, but for the past year, every week. We smashed it. I hope it goes on for another year, even once we're out of the pandemic. But happy anniversary and to many more.
I look forward to many more. And you know what? I think we created a little interesting time capsule for a really difficult year, And I think we had that little. I don't think there were a lot of similar weekly little time capsules in boxing. So I think we created a little piece of history, Danny. So maybe some down the line we'll turn it into the best of.
We'll start touring live when the pandemic's over.
You never know.
Cheers, Lou. Take care, and I'll speak
tell
to
you
you
one of the
next week.
first places. I can't wait till I can come back and have a good time in the UK. I look forward to doing that and seeing some of the fans and look, it's always great to be in the UK because it's funny. I get recognized more, and I get more comments from people when I walk around London than I do New York. Well, that's not quite true, but any place else in the country other than New York, I know more people and I see more boxing fans when I'm in the UK than I do any place else in America, maybe other than New York, because I have spent a lot of time in New York.
We look forward to seeing you back here as well. And but for now, we'll see you online next week.
Good. I enjoyed this, Danny, and I look forward to our next week's conversation.
Great. Take care, Lou. Speak soon.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, guys, for tuning in.